everybody. My name is Aviv Cohen. I'm a solution architect at All Cloud. We are a premier solution partner with AWS. With me also have Lav Savir and Elran Kadosh. And we all together, we do the metrics and billing SaaS lab for today. So a little bit for the agenda for the next 90 minutes. I will present the billing and metering, and afterwards we will have a Q&A session regarding this topic. And then Elran, my colleague, will do the operations and metrics presentation. And afterwards, you will have also time for Q&A for this topic. So I think we will have much time for Q&A and to review all the session deeply. So let's start with metering and billing. First of all, I want to distinguish between two terms. One is the metrics and the other one is metering. Metrics is the data that we are going to collect inside our SaaS application in order to evaluate our performance, operational, health, and etc. And this topic will be covered by my colleague Elran later on. I want to focus on metering. Metering is the billable units data that we are going to collect in order to charge our customer eventually with they will pay money for our services. So before starting, I want to review some billing models that part of you maybe already know. The first billing model is a subscription. Subscription is when the customer is coming to our SaaS application, and then he will choose the subscription type that he wants, and you know that he will going to be to pay every billable period, every month, every year, the same amount of money. It's a fixed price solution that you can bill every month. Another billing model is usage. Usage is that the customer is going to pay according to his usage. If we are, let's say, the media streaming SaaS, and we want to charge our customer according to his bandwidth. So if the customer use a lot of bandwidth this period of bill, he will charge more than last month or something like this. Another way to bill our customer is using features. If we have a rich environment, rich feature SaaS application, we can give the customer the freedom to choose which features he's going to use, and according to the features that he chooses, he will be paid. Another way to charge our customer is according to the number of users that are registered under the customer. It can be per user per month billing model. And if there are some SaaS applications that will use the active user approach, but eventually it's more or less the same because the amount of users that are using the application is the amount of money that the customer needs to pay. Another way to bill our customer is using the mix and match. It gives our customer the freedom to tailor his own billing model. Let's say that you have an application that also have features, but on each feature, you can also charge according to his usage. So you can give the customer the ability to choose the features, and inside each feature, to use the amount of usage that he wants to use. And then the customer feeling that he have the ability to choose between the freedom to choose between the billing models. So let's do an overview of how we are billing in SaaS environment. First of all, we need to contact with billing provider. Billing provider is a third-party solution, can be a platform that do the billing for us. meaning that all the billing and all the generate bill will done using the billing provider, and you will only inform the billing provider according to the customer usage. First of all, we need to set up account that the billing provider will be aware that we are existing and we want to charge our customer. And then we will need to configure the billing plan. Okay, we will need to say the billing provider how the customer is going to be charged with what plans. Afterwards, in our SaaS application tenant, when the customer is coming and do the onboarding process, it will register to our SaaS application. The SaaS application will do all the internal stuff that needs to be done during the onboarding process. Let's say creating databases, creating servers, I don't know what. And eventually, we will inform our billing provider that there are new customer under our account. And the end of the billing period, let's say the month, the customer needs to pay us, and according to his usage, will pay. In the meantime of the billing period, the customer will do activity that will generate billing units, will generate the billing event. Okay, those billing events need eventually we need to inform the billing provider that the customer did that and used that, and according to what we will say to what we send to the billing provider, the billing provider will generate the bill. Okay, the billing provider will send the customer, you need to pay this month this amount of money because you use this one, or this one, according to the billing plan that you created. So let's talk about what are the billable units that we can charge our customer. First of all, we can use a compute usage like AWS EC2. You choose how many CPU you want, how many RAM do you want, for how long you're using this CPU, and then you bill according to this usage. Another one is storage access. How many puts or gets your customer did to your storage units. Data consumption. How many storage the customer use on your data storage? Okay, let's say that 1 gigabyte, 1 terabyte, whatever they use, they will be charged. You can charge your customer according to the active users, like we said before. How many active users the customers have? According to that, the customer will be billed. The customer can be billed according to the number of requests. Okay, let's say that your application, your SaaS application is exposing an API, and the number, according to the number of API calls, you can generate a bill. Also, bandwidth usage. How much? What is the amount of data that the customer transfer between the SaaS application to the outside world? You can charge by ingress, by egress, both of them, one of them, whatever you think that will cost you money. You will need to also charge the customer. So billing plans and configuring the billing plan and charging by the billing plan can be a little bit challenging. Okay, so eventually we have an invoice that we want to send to the customer. Okay? But for creating this invoice, first of all, we need to create an order. Okay, and the order that the invoice is based on will need to be based also on the subscription that the customer did to your SaaS application. Okay, let's say he subscribed to a basic plan. So according to the basic plan, it needs to be charged. But inside the subscription, there must be products. What are the products? Are the billable units. Let's say it's storage, that's the bandwidth, whatever. Okay, so all those billing units needs to be under a subscription. and also the rate plan of this product. What are the rate plan? Let's say if it's storage, so the rate plan will be gigabyte per month. Okay, and inside those rate plan, we can also create some charge here. Let's say for the first 10 gigabytes, we won't charge the customer at all. It's free of charge. But above 10 gigabytes per month, the customer needs to be charged. All of this together, we create the invoice, the proper invoice or the exact invoice that we want to send to the customer. And all of this activity will be done by your billing provider. So another topic, after we know what the billing provider is doing, we need to know how to work with our billing provider. Okay, and one of the best practices is using an async and fault tolerant way. Let's say that we have a registration process. First of all, customer is coming, and in our tenant management, we will create a tenant. Again, if we need to create a silo or pooled or whatever, we create a tenant. After the tenant, we create some users. And then we will need to inform our billing provider that there is a new customer and new user on this customer. In order to inform our billing provider, it's suggested to use a proxy, something in between that will give us the work of asynchronous way with the billing provider. Okay, the main reason for doing that is that we cannot control our billing provider availability. Something can be wrong, something can be changed, something can be, I don't know, infrastructure or things like this. And we need to make sure that each activity that needs to come to our billing provider will eventually come. And the right way to do it is with buffer and asynchronous way. In this example, we're using an SQS queue. SQS queue is a AWS service of queuing. And in that way, we can put message in the queue, and then the billing provider can fetch the message, and vice versa. The billing provider will put message to this queue, and we will read the message from this billing provider. So after we create a user or a customer in our SaaS environments, there are there's changes in the customer life cycles that again needs to be informed the billing provider. Let's say that the tenant is disabled. Let's say that the tenant or the customer changes tier. And all of this needs to get into the billing provider database. For doing that, the billing provider will provide us some tools. Some of the billing provider will give us a CLI for command line interface, and you can do this by batch processing or whatever. Some of the billing providers can give you also code libraries, and you can integrate it and embed it into your own code, your own SaaS application code. Okay, so you can integrate with a billing provider also with code libraries. Another way is API. Okay, billing provider can expose some API for some functionalities, and you need to call those API. So there are many integration patterns that can be used in order to inform our billing provider of changes that made in our SaaS application. Another best practice that you should use when you are working with billing providing is working with aggregated billing data. It means that you won't send the customer, you not send to the billing provider event every time that the customer did a billable unit event. Let's say a proper solution that you can do based on AWS services would be as follows. Let's say that you have any microservice in your SaaS application, and this microservice will create a billing event. Let's say the customer did an HTTP request to our infrastructure, and it needs to be billed about it. Okay, so there is a service of AWS that called Amazon Event Bridge. Amazon Event Bridge is an event bus that from one side can get a message, an event based on JSON structure, and in the other one, you can call a Lambda function. Lambda function is a serverless compute service of AWS that runs your code. You don't need computers, you don't need anything. Just put the code inside the Lambda function and it will run by itself. Okay, so this event bridge will, from one side, will get the billing event, as we said, HTTP request, and it will store it into a DynamoDB table. DynamoDB is a NoSQL high-performance database in AWS that you can store any kind of data inside it. So each event, let's say that the customer did 1 million requests, those 1 million requests will get inside your DynamoDB table. You won't send those 1 million requests to your billing provider. Afterwards, we'll say why not. But you will have a billing aggregator. Billing aggregator, you can use a step function. Step function is an AWS service that visualize your work and automate your business process. Okay, and inside this automated business process, again, you can call for Lambda function. So one of the Lambda function or a couple of Lambda function can scan the database, and aggregate the data according to the customer activity. And then from 1 million HTTP requests, you can send only one row that said this customer did a 1 million HTTP request. So you are calling to, you will do one call to your billing provider, one API, in that case, API call to your billing provider. The aggregator, the aggregation functions can also delete all the 1 million records that they already aggregated and put only one line in this database. In that way, you also reduce the cost of your internal storage because you are not storing 1 million requests but one. And in another way, you are reducing the API call to the billing provider, and you can overcome some API limits that the billing provider can give you. Let's say that the billing provider said that you can call only 1,000 requests per month, okay? Or we charge you by HTTP request. So you can reduce the cost by having less HTTP requests. Another solution that AWS can give you for a billing solution is the AWS Marketplace. AWS Marketplace is a marketplace that you can put your services and your SaaS application inside it. And first of all, you get the publicity of the AWS Marketplace among the AWS community and more. And from the billing perspective, AWS Marketplace can give you actually four kind of billing methods. One is subscription, as we talked before. Customer is subscribed to a certain billing subscription and will pay fixed amount of money each billing period. Other one is contracts. Contract is if you can give your customer some discounts if you're willing to commit you for a long-term contract, such 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. If he will down payment, he give you upfront for partial upfront. He also can give you a discount using the contract. Another billing method is a contract. It's an hybrid solution between the two above, meaning that the customer is starting with subscription, with free trial, with a low price trial, and then if he satisfied from your solution, he can switch into a long-term contract and enjoy the discounts. Another billing model that AWS Marketplace can give you, it's private pricing. Okay, if you can negotiate with your customer and you can reach a certain price, you can set this price to a specific customer using the private pricing methods. Finally, some takeaways from my presentation. First of all, don't invent the wheel. Okay, land on a third-party solution. They know what they're doing. They already done it. They have the knowledge. They have the ability to do things that you don't need to invent. Second, pricing plan. We saw it can be very complex. If we can abstract the pricing plan, it means that the customer know what is going to be paid, and you will be able to charge it more easily. We don't know, and we cannot control our billing provider uptime. Therefore, we need to work asynchronously with the billing provider or do some mechanism that will not rely on the uptime of our billing provider. As we already talked, if we do aggregation of our data before sending it to our billing provider, we can overcome our API limits and we can reduce the internal storage cost by storing only the aggregated data. We also saw that integration can be very complex, and we need to do it lightweight, meaning that things to be straightforward, not to do very complex thing, and we need to be open to changes that will be made inside of the billing provider. And the last one that you need to consider that working with billing provider is two-way communication, meaning that the billing provider is also inform you in changes or state that changes in the customer, and you need to be able to process them and to working according to the changes that the billing providers give you. And that's all from my side. First of all, I want to thank you, everybody, for listening for my lecture. And second, we have a little bit time for Q&A right now. So feel free to ask whatever you want.
I've got a question. Can you suggest us good billing providers that are outside of AWS, so that we can I think, yeah, AWS Marketplace might be a nice solution, but our customers are usually non-tech people. If they have heard about AWS, they only have heard about it. Oh, that's a service provider we don't want to have our data on because they are in the US. So if we have the least touch points with a customer and AWS, it's I think better. So can you suggest us a good payment provider, billing provider for this kind, like outside of AWS?
There was a little bit suggestion in the presentation. There is Stripe and Chargebill that are a very good solution.
Okay.
Personally, most of them doing the work fine. And it's not related if you're working in AWS or not AWS. You can work with any billing provider that it's suit for you. There are some billing providers that give you code libraries that not really fit to your platform. So you need to consider it also. You need to see how you can integrate easily with the billing provider. This is I think for myself, this is the most important thing that you are working with billing provider. The integration needs to be smooth and easy.
Okay.
Okay.
Hi. Quick question about the two-way communication that you mentioned. Can you add more details about it? Any examples about events that the billing provider may send me, when, how, why?
So there are some cases that you can, let's say you put a plan for customer with a limit of usage. Okay. And there are sometimes that the billing provider can also strict this usage from each side. So if you want to rely on this kind of messages, you will get a notification from the billing provider. Another thing is that maybe customer does not exist anymore, or there is something in miscommunication between you guys. So when you are doing an API call or something else with the billing provider, there always will be a response. And on top of that, sometimes the billing provider can initiate this kind of messages, and then you will work, as we already talked, with the async, with some buffer in between us.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Great. So if we don't have any other questions, we can proceed to the next lecture. Elran, this is your moment.
Yeah, just stop share. Avil, stop your share and let everyone start. I'm
not sharing anymore.
Okay, so everybody, I'm glad to be here. Let me share my screen. Tell me if you see a blank desktop.
Yes.
Great. So I'm Elran from All Cloud Solutions Factory team, where we try to capture common issues and challenges exist in the industry and template those into products that we provide for our customers. And the next slide is a little bit technical, so it requires your attention, though I do promise that we brought some interesting materials for you guys. So let's start the slide. Okay. So we're going to discuss three topics that are at the core of building SaaS application architectures. These are operations, metrics, and analytics. Before I begin, I want to emphasize that this presentation talks more about the mental model rather than providing you with more technical prescriptions. And this derives from the fact that there is no one-size-fits-all SaaS architecture. Your business domain, compliance requirements, the market segments of your customers, and nature of your product all have distinct influence on your SaaS architecture. So it's okay to be different and have your own way of doing things. Some even call this innovation, yet we do recommend you stand on the shoulders of giants by using a well-defined framework of processes and methodologies for making architectural decisions when building your SaaS architecture. So this presentation borrows materials from AWS well-architected framework SaaS Lens. After the presentation, at your own free time, you can Google it. You can Google for the SaaS Lens and you'll find many more materials. Right now, we're just going to go over some points of emphasis for right process thinking that I hope would be helpful for you guys. So our first topic of discussion would be operations. And it all starts with the question, why SaaS? Why software as a service? And what's so special about SaaS architectures that differentiate them from more traditional enterprise architecture? Or in essence, why are you here? I believe that that's because you care about your business. You see other thriving companies building SaaS applications in the cloud, and you want your architecture to benefit from the same economies of scale and ability to innovate rapidly, just as they do. I'm not here to sell you a dream. We can make your business successful, right? But we can help with the technical aspects of building the technology behind your business. And our SaaS journey starts with the core SaaS tenants of agility, innovation, frequentless onboarding experience, zero downtime deployments, and tenant-aware observability. Every successful SaaS architecture reflects these core tenants, and that's because SaaS demands a higher operational bar, which you must keep in order to stay competitive in this competitive market. Keep the following key operational areas at the top of your head when planning for SaaS. So starts with smooth, seamless, fast onboarding experience through a unified automated process. This is core to enabling growth and ensuring that new customers will have a faster path to first value. Optimize for faster release cycles and forego bespoke customer customizations. Having a single universal version of your application enables you to focus on value-added activities. Yet, different customers have different needs, and one may ask, how can I satisfy unique customer requirements and implement targeted deployments? Sometimes that's just a business requirement, right? So our answer is that SaaS architectures utilize modern delivery mechanisms like feature toggles, where software and infrastructure components can be enabled and deployed based on customer demand. This way, every new feature is an integral part of a single product version, and there is no need for continuous development of multiple forks. And because different customers have different needs, again, touching on the same point, it's recommended to architect your software components to fit different customer tiers. For instance, a small to medium startup company might choose to take the risk of degraded availability caused by a noisy neighbor, just to cut down infrastructure costs by using a shared pool of resources. On the contrary, a large enterprise customer would prefer to bear the costs of running in isolated infrastructure. So building your SaaS architecture in a way that can fit with multiple customer tiers will greatly benefit your growth. Last but not least, our metrics and analytics. Collecting, aggregating, and analyzing system and business metrics is key to continuous development. That's true not just in the SaaS world, but software as a service architectures add another layer to this cake, where the tenant context is present on every metric, event, and log. Next, deliver value in small increments. Every development starts with requirements gathering. Try to minimize the scope of what defines a deployable unit of work so that you can reach out to your customers faster with added value. Then gather their feedback. Don't just rely on metrics and analytics. Personal contact will make your customers feel that you are there for them. And customer trust is essential for the success of SaaS applications. This diagram demonstrates an implementation of tier-based deployments in which infrastructure provisioning applies in reaction to updates in your tenant database. So code commit, which is AWS managed Git solution, is used to store tenant account configurations, where new commits to the configuration repository trigger a CI job to provision new tenant infrastructure, or maybe update an existing tenant's infrastructure in the case of an upgrade to a subscription. You can implement targeted deployments by adding continuous delivery to the mix. The specifics of which service to choose, of which continuous delivery service to choose, depends on the compute nodes that make up your SaaS application. So it doesn't really matter which tool you choose as long as it enables you to make targeted deployments, because that's an enabler for agility in SaaS architectures. Next on, When talking about tier deployments, you will usually find that there is a basic tier for customers who are willing to cut down costs. We want to cut down costs at the cost of using a shared pool of infrastructure. And on the other side, customers of a premium tier will usually have dedicated infrastructure for the tenants' workloads. 2 points here. First one is that tiers can apply not just to infrastructure components, they can also apply to application features. Some features will be enabled in all tiers, while others will only be included in a more premium tier. And so it's important to build your SaaS architecture components to be adaptable to both models. And while doing so, remember that this is not a black or white thing. The decision of whether to build application services for one or another isolation model is a per service decision. And most SaaS architectures include some components that are always shared, such as a billing service or tenant registration service. Next on, build yourself a panel where key company stakeholders can have an operational view of the overall health of your system and analyze individual tenant activity. And when instrumenting metrics, when thinking about the first building blocks for your SaaS architecture, it's important to keep the tenant context at the top of your head. That's because this is one of those things that appear everywhere. Every log, metric, and event should include the tenant ID. And under most circumstances, the tenant ID will also form part of the primary key in database entries. That's why it is essential to add the tenant context right from the first building block. Don't neglect it now just to be done with this one customer, because you might find yourself rebuilding your application later on. So this is really one of the emphasized points that are important to take, that you take into consideration when starting your SaaS journey. And with that said, try to encapsulate the notion of tenancy from your developers. Building a microservice for multi-tenant application shouldn't be that different from building a microservice for a single tenant application. To achieve encapsulation, you can build software libraries and tools that hide the notion of multi-tenancy. One such example could be a metrics library that grabs the tenant's context from the authentication token and sends it along with every metric sent. There are many other examples you can think of. It really depends on how you instrument your system. Just be aware that wherever the tenant context can be encapsulated into reusable tools, it's something that's very recommended to do right from the beginning. Tenant onboarding, again, very important subject. The onboarding process should be fast and seamless. The better the onboarding experience is, the quicker your customer gets to their first value. Also, I'd like to say that in the software as a service world, the best service is self-service. So make sure that the onboarding process is fully automated, because people don't like to fill in contact us forms. When a new tenant registers into your application, she provides root account credentials. Once done, one should be able to log into an administrative dashboard and onboard their colleagues. Your tenants can then use the same administrative application for other administrative tasks. So that's key for enabling operations and transparency, which is important to your customers as much as it is important to you. Example use cases for just administrative dashboard will be to manage account settings and security policies, onboarding other colleagues, and view operational data. make sure to build proactive policies so that your customers are alerted in real time about what's going on, about their system health, about their tenant health, and make sure to surface these policies into the administrative tool. That's about operations. Just a few key points of emphasis for implementing a proper process of planning SaaS architectures. Next on, we will move to metrics and analytics. Let's start with talking about high-level metric domains. So when planning your metrics, plan for multi-dimensional metrics and don't just stick to a single dimension, because business, technical, and operational agility relies on rich metrics, which you can only get if you cover multiple domains. Within these overall dimensions, think about more specific metric categories like business health, usage of application features, and resource consumption by tenants. Then go on a little bit more before you start collecting metrics, and make sure that you write down your goals, because at the end, it's all about achieving these goals, right? So it's good to write them down to make sure you are collecting the right metrics. Then repeat this process for every metric category. To give a few examples of goals for business health metrics are monthly recurring revenue and customer acquisition costs. But of course, you can add your own goals here. It's just important to see that when instrumenting metrics, that you are able to achieve your goals and drive the intended insights out of it. A few example goals for availability metrics are what's my system availability, how frequent we release the features to production, how many production faults do we have, and what is the mean time to detection. And go on just a little bit more, because at this point, you're at the final stage of planning your metrics, where you start asking concrete questions. We should be able to get a direct answer for these questions based on our metrics. So having those questions written down can greatly improve the value derived from metrics. A few example metrics you can see on the screen are about feature usage and respondents to tenant load, the successful deployment rates. At the end, make sure to aggregate all of your metrics, both system and business metrics, into a centralized data warehouse. And then make this information accessible via a BI tool of choice. This is extremely important because many key stakeholders can help you drive business insights out of these metrics, and they shouldn't be kept closed just for technical employees. So it's very important to have a centralized data warehouse for all of your metrics and make this information accessible and ask for the feedback of your colleagues. Next on, put an emphasis on recognizing value from metrics, because the end, it's all about recognizing value. If there is no value, there is no worth to our metrics, right? So that is a repetitive process. Can you hear me? Hey, sorry, I had a disconnection.
Yes. Now
Okay, I'll continue. Make sure that on every iteration where you instrument, aggregate, and analyze your metrics, you are able to recognize the value that you get out of them, and also recognize value from your customers The feedback of your customers is also measurable by metrics. So whenever your customers are interested in one thing or another, make sure that you can measure it and add it to add this to your ingestion pipeline. This is a repetitive process because demand evolve over time, and you need to keep evolving your product over time in order to stay competitive. It's important to label your customers by their activity patterns, and this is something that we recommend you do before and after your customers get to their first value. This kind of labeling, just simple labeling, using maybe a few colors or textual labels, and having this information aggregated into the same ingestion pipeline that end in your data warehouse will help you correlate customer profiles to business insights about feature usage and resource consumption patterns, and probably other insights as well. And to summarize, AWS Well Architecture Framework SaaS Lens aims at helping you build SaaS architectures that scale with evolving demands and with an increasing amount of customer profiles. So I really recommend you to, whoever haven't done it so far, I recommend you to Google the SaaS Lens architecture pages. Some things, of course, will be obvious, but that's a good thing as well. It brings the overall well-architected framework, but really puts it in context of SaaS architecture. So it's kind of connecting the pieces together of how SaaS affects overall, the overall general practices, and how this can be adopted to match the needs of a SaaS business. And that's it. So key takeaways from the presentation are that SaaS sets a higher operational bar. The notion of tenancy and multi-tier or tier-aware deployments adds another layer of complexity to developer operations. Onboarding process. It's important that the onboarding process will be fast and seamless, because this is one of those things that are essential for the growth of SaaS businesses. Metrics behind your business and technology. Again, it's important. This is a very competitive market, and in order to tune your product into the right direction, you should really aim at being data-driven. And remember that your application is just one source of metric data. Talk to your customers. Have personal contact with them to make them trust you more. And trust is a key to the success of SaaS businesses. Make sure to make operations, tenant operations, accessible to your customers, as well as tenant metrics, both operational and business metrics. Your customers want to drive business insights from their usage of your product, just as you do. And that's it, guys. So if you have any more questions, now we will have some time for Q&A, and you can also feel free to email us at saaslabs@allcloud.io with any queries or for any purpose. Actually, we're just here for you, and that's it.